Hi, welcome back to the Z-fari video book. We're going to read the second part of chapter 4 today. So if you're ready, get comfortable and we'll begin. Dr. MacDougall pulled his 1973 Volvo 1800 ES shooting brake into his parking slot behind their border patrol station. He had called it the Rocket ever since the day he had bought it from a real little old lady in Pasadena, California, after he had graduated from Caltech in 1994. She had only driven it on Sundays. The odometer had read 37,000 miles. He had had it checked over by two of his mechanical engineer friends and then again by the Cuban mechanic who lived down the block. He washed it and scrupulously cleaned the interior every Saturday and waxed it by hand with an attention to detail that his wife wished he would put into where she needed to be waxed. He leaned over and grabbed his briefcase and the little brown paper bag that held his lunch, a ham and Swiss cheese sandwich on squishy white bread, yellow mustard on one slice and Miracle Whip on the other slice, wrapped in wax paper, a Gala apple and 2 Oreo cookies in a Ziploc bag. The same lunch he had made for himself and brought to work every day for the past 5 years, and ever since he had been transferred to Wichita. He eased out of the car, locked her up, and walked into the big, ugly building. He walked straight to the elevator, ignoring the people he passed in the halls, and stood still for the iris scan. The door opened. He stepped in, and the little room dropped into the basement lab. The doctor stepped out of the elevator and flipped the switches on the wall. The ceiling lights burst on, illuminating the lab and the 2 restraint chairs that sat 10 feet apart. The zombie did what it always did, nothing. Willie took a second and then began shouting, "Let me up! Get these straps off me! Who do you think you are? Do you know who I am?" And a dozen other questions and demands until he paused for breath. Dr. MacDougall walked past Jerry, the zombie, and over in front of Willie. Duncan MacDougall, let me out!" Willie yelled, spit flying out of his mouth. "What the hell is going on here? Take these straps off of me. You're in a lot of trouble now, Duncan. I'll bury you." Dr. MacDougall waited patiently for Willie to come to a stop. "Wilbur," the doctor said quietly, "I guess that I do owe you an explanation. We've never discovered how zombies are created. We've read all the literature, investigated viruses and bacterial infections, run every scan science knows. We found nothing. We needed an index case. Thanks to the Patriot Act, we were able to send some of our people to bring you in for questioning. Not that anyone will miss you." Dr. MacDougall allowed himself a smirk. "And now that we have our patient zero, you'll finally be doing something for the benefit of someone besides yourself. You will, for once in your life, be engaged in meaningful work. Congratulations." Willie actually sputtered. Then he began yelling again. Dr. MacDougall had anticipated this and had gone online to good old Amazon.com, where he had found a breathable silicone ball gag with adjustable leather neck straps and a lock, $11. And it was prime, so it was delivered to Dr. MacDougall by FedEx the next day. And even better, the nice folks at Happy Bondage, Inc. included a free leather whip. Dr. MacDougall wasn't exactly sure when he would have the opportunity to use the whip, but he had been practicing with it on his lunch hour every day since it had arrived, and while he was no Lash LaRue yet, he had learned how to snap that whip without hurting himself with it. The only downside to the order was that every time Dr. MacDougall got on Facebook, there were now dozens of ads for some truly perverted sex toys. He would have to sit down with Mrs. McDonald one of these days and look them over in more detail. Dr. MacDougall went to his desk and opened the top drawer. He pulled out the ball gag and walked over behind Willie and slipped it into Willie's mouth. Securing the leather straps and then locking them was more difficult than he thought because Willie's head was secured by the leather strap across his forehead, but after 2 attempts, the doctor succeeded. Willie started screaming again. It was not as loud, but it was irritating. "Wilbur," Dr. MacDougall said softly, "if you persist in this annoying screaming, I'll put a bag over your head until you stop." Willie screamed again. Dr. MacDougall walked over to a cabinet, opened the doors, and pulled out a canvas bag that could have been used to store sails. He opened it up, walked over to Willie, and slid the bag over the top of the chair, over Willie's head, past his shoulders, all the way to his elbows. Then he walked out of the lab into the break room to get a cup of coffee. The screaming gradually got softer and then ceased altogether. Dr. MacDougall sipped his coffee slowly. He checked his Facebook page on his phone and found one new friend request from a fat white trash dominatrix. Damn Amazon.com. No messages, 4 notifications. He had 3 Facebook friends, his wife, his son, his roommate from Caltech many years ago. And 17 ads from penis enlarger companies, fuck friend services, and a company selling inflatable love dolls that looked a lot like Katy Perry. Damn Amazon.com, but he bookmarked that one just in case. He went to Google News and read the science and technology sections, and then went to the Weekly World News site and read the "Saturn is a giant UFO" article. Then it was time to get back to work. He gulped down his last of his coffee, took the cup to the sink and rinsed it, and then set the cup in the drying rack. Then he walked back into the lab. The zombie was quiet, then it always was. The other restraint chair with the large canvas bag pulled over the top was quietly shaking. Dr. MacDougall walked over to the bag and said softly, "I'm going to take the bag off now. If you are well behaved, it will remain off. If you show me that you require more quiet time, I will put it back on. What happens is entirely up to you." The doctor pulled the bag up and finally off of Willie. He was quiet, but his eyes radiated murder. Dr. MacDougall laid the bag on the floor and turned to pick up a clipboard from the metal table beside the restraint chair. He noted the day and time and wrote a terse summary of what had happened since he had walked into the lab that morning. Dr. MacDougall had planned a series of experiments in order to ascertain the means of zombification. He had decided to investigate the effects of proximity, tactile contact with and without excoriation, and finally bites, including monitoring signs of infection indicated by pain and tenderness, increased or new redness, swelling, fever, pus drainage, presence of thin red streaks running toward the center of the body, indicating blood poisoning or lymphangitis, and or swollen lymph glands in various parts of the body: feet, hands, legs, arms, abdomen, thorax, neck, and head. Dr. MacDougall explained what was about to happen to Willie. "You've been within 10 feet of a zombie for the past afternoon and night. We will first keep you within 10 feet for 24 hours and then run a battery of neurological and hematological tests, as well as a number of scans. If there's no indication of zombification at 24 hours, we will move you to within a foot of the zombie for another 24-hour period. We will again run the same series of tests and scans. If there's still no evidence of zombification, we will move on to phase 2, tactile contact, with and without excoriation. Again, after each phase segment, we will run the same tests and scans. If phase 2 does not indicate definitive evidence of zombification, we will move on to phase 3. Zombie omophagia. Omophagia is the medical term for eating raw meat. So we are creating a new scientific phrase to explain our theory if we get that far. You are doing a great service for humanity. Unfortunately, using you in our experiments is highly illegal and unethical. So your name will never be mentioned whether we succeed or fail, but you should be proud nonetheless." Dr. MacDougall finished making a note at the bottom of the first page of his clipboard, and he set the clipboard back on the metal table next to Willie. He glanced at his watch. "Oh, I've got a meeting in 15 minutes upstairs, so I'll leave you," he said to Willie. "Don't get in any trouble while I'm gone," he giggled. "I'll check back with you before I go home." The doctor went back to his desk and grabbed a folder. Then he walked to the elevator and pushed the button. It was 12:55.